We're counting down the 15 forgotten BB guns every American boy begged for at Christmas. Guns that filled the pages of the Sears Wish book, glowed on the back covers of comic books, and turned frosty December mornings into pure legend. From cowboy six-shooters to pump-action powerhouses, each one promised a rite of passage, a first taste of trust wrapped in blued steel and walnut. Some sold millions, then vanished from under the tree almost overnight. Which one tops the list? Let's begin the countdown with number 15. Number 15. The Marksman repeater pistol was the gun a boy got when a rifle was still one Christmas too far away. Made by Marksman Products out in California, it was a squat die-cast air pistol that dropped a line of BBs down through the grip and fed them one at a time with a spring, so a kid could squeeze off 18 shots before reloading. In the late 1950s and 1960s, it sold for just a couple of dollars, cheap enough to ride along at the bottom of a stocking beside the oranges and the walnuts. The back pages of every comic book carried its picture, promising a repeater that looked like something a G-man would carry. Boys pumped the slide, felt the weight settle into their palm, and lined up on tin soldiers arranged along the porch rail. The BB left the muzzle slow and lazy, more thump than crack, but that hardly mattered. It was the shape of a real pistol in a small hand that counted, the click of the action, the smell of oil and cold metal. Oral histories from 100 backyards recall the Marksman as the starter gun, the one you learned on before you earned a long gun. Yet as carbon dioxide replicas and airsoft lookalikes flooded the shelves decades later, the humble little repeater faded from memory, remembered now only by the men who fired their very first shot through it. Number 14. The Daisy No. 40 military model turned a boy into a soldier the moment he shouldered it. Introduced during the First World War, this lever-action rifle was built to look like a doughboy's Springfield, complete with a slim socket bayonet that clipped onto the muzzle, and it sold for about $5, a serious sum that helped push Daisy to its first $500,000 sales year in 1916. Fathers who had drilled in real uniforms understood the appeal at once. A boy could march the length of the yard, present arms, and fix that bayonet with a snap that made the neighborhood dogs bark. Catalogs of the era showed ranks of grinning children in paper hats, rifles at the ready, and every armistice day, the number 40 came out to lead the parade down the sidewalk. The blued barrel and the straight military stock made it the most grown-up gun a young boy could hope to carry. Yet the military model belonged to a particular moment, when war was still dressed in glory, and a bayonet on a toy rifle raised no eyebrows. As the decades turned and the appetite for martial toys cooled, Daisy quietly let the design go. Today, the number 40 survives mostly in the glass cases of collectors and the yellowed pages of old advertisements, a relic of a Christmas morning when a boy wanted nothing more than to look like the men marching home. Number 13. The Crosman V350 was the gun that taught a whole generation what a trigger felt like. Built by Crosman up in Fairport, New York, it was a spring-powered catapult gun that flung a single BB down the barrel with a distinctive metallic twang, a sound every boy who owned one could pick out blindfolded. Through the late 1950s and into the 1960s, the V350 sat on hardware store racks as the affordable long gun, the one Dad could justify because it cost little and asked only that a boy learn to respect it. It came with a real wood stock in its better years, and a kid would carry it slung over one shoulder into the vacant lot, feeling 10 feet tall. Cans lined up on a fallen log never stood a chance, and the ping of a direct hit rang out across the field like a small bell. Fathers used it to teach the sacred rules: muzzle down, finger off, treat every gun as loaded, and many a boy's first lesson in patience came from cocking that stubborn spring. Oral histories recalled the V350 as the honest workhorse, powerful enough to feel real, cheap enough to survive being left out in the rain. Yet when the multi-pump pneumatics arrived with their promise of adjustable power and greater range, the simple spring gun was left behind. The V350 slipped out of the catalogs and into the attic, its twang fading from the American backyard. Number 12. The Daisy Buzz Barton Special was the very first BB gun to carry the name of a movie star, and boys clamored for it the way they later clamored for anything a cowboy touched. named for the teenage Western sensation Buzz Barton, who rode across the silver screen while still a kid himself. This lever-action rifle arrived in the early 1930s and gave a boy the feeling that his hero had handed him the reins personally. Daisy had discovered something powerful, that a famous face on the stock was worth more than any technical improvement, and the Buzz Barton flew off the shelves at a price a Depression-era family could just about manage. A boy would practice his quick draw stance in the mirror, work the lever with a flourish, and imagine the dusty streets of a frontier town rolling out beyond the back fence. Comic strips and Saturday matinees fed the fever, and every schoolyard argument over who was faster ended with somebody promising to prove it come Christmas. The Special and the later Super Buzz Barton became the guns that started Daisy's long love affair with the cowboy legend. Yet fame is a fragile thing, and as Buzz Barton's star dimmed and new heroes galloped in to replace him, the gun that bore his name slipped quietly from memory. Today, few recall that the whole tradition of the celebrity BB gun began with a boy actor and the rifle that carried his name into 1 million American living rooms. Number 11, the Daisy Model 179. Six-gun let a boy strap on the Old West and wear it low on his hip. Introduced in 1960 as the very first of Daisy's spit-and image line, it was a faithful copy of the Colt single-action army, the peacemaker that won the frontier, and it fed BBs into a 12-shot repeater cocked with a single thumb on the hammer. Every boy who had ever watched Matt Dillon face down a bad man on the streets of Dodge wanted one hanging from his belt. And come Christmas morning, the sight of that long, gun-shaped box sent hearts pounding. A kid would practice drawing from the hip, spinning it on one finger, blowing imaginary smoke from the barrel after every showdown. The heft of the die-cast frame, the click of the hammer drawing back, the cowboy dream made solid in a young hand. In truth, old-timers admit the 179 looked far cooler than it shot, sending its BB out with more style than force. But no boy in 1960 cared a lick about muzzle velocity when he was busy being the fastest gun in the neighborhood. Oral histories recall backyard duels at high noon, the standoff settled by who could draw first. Yet as the Western faded from television and the culture of the cap-gun cowboy gave way to spacemen and superheroes, the six-shooter lost its place under the tree. The Model 179 became a curiosity, a reminder of the years when every American boy dreamed in black and white and wore his holster to breakfast. Number 10. The Daisy Targeteer was the gentleman's BB gun, the one that promised a boy could shoot straight in the living room without his mother ever raising her voice. This compact target pistol used tiny shots smaller than an ordinary BB, and it came boxed as a complete kit with a paper target, a little metal trap to catch the shot, and a tube of ammunition size just for it. Through the 1940s and into the post-war years, it was marketed as the safe, tidy introduction to marksmanship, a gun a boy could shoot at a target pinned across the basement while snow piled up against the windows. There was a ritual to it that the rowdier guns never had. A boy would load with care, take a breath, line up the sights on the bullseye, and try to punch a tight little cluster into the paper the way the champions did. Fathers who wanted their sons to learn discipline before power steered them toward the Targeteer, and many a steady hand was schooled on its light trigger and modest report. It taught patience, focus, and the quiet pride of a well-grouped target. Yet the Targeteer asked for a stillness that a boy with a whole backyard to conquer rarely wanted to give, and as the bigger, louder, faster guns took over the imagination, the little parlor pistol was set aside. Today, the Targeteer is nearly forgotten, its neat cardboard kits surviving only in the collections of those who remember when marksmanship was taught one careful shot at a time. Number 9. The Benjamin Pump Pneumatic was the gun a serious boy graduated to, the one that separated the plinkers from the shooters. Built by the Benjamin Air Rifle Company of St. Louis and stamped on many models with the proud roll mark Benjamin Franklin, it was a bolt-action beauty of brass and nickel that a boy charged by pumping a lever beneath the barrel, each stroke packing in more air and more power. Where the spring guns sent a BB out with a lazy thump, the Benjamin cracked, and it could drive a pellet clean through a tin can and out the other side. Farm boys prized it above almost anything. because it was accurate enough and strong enough to earn its keep in the barn and the orchard. A boy would count his pumps like a ritual, 3 for close targets, 8 for the far fence post, feeling the resistance build with each stroke until the gun was ready to bark. The gleam of that nickel barrel under the Christmas tree told a boy his parents finally considered him old enough for the real thing. Oral histories recall the Benjamin as the gun that lasted a lifetime, handed down from father to son, rebuilt and resealed and never thrown away. Yet as the brand was folded into larger companies and the polished pump guns of old gave way to molded plastic and mass production, the classic brass and nickel Benjamin faded from the everyday. Today, it is a collector's treasure, remembered as the gun that meant a boy had truly arrived. Number 8. The Crosman V350 Pumpmaster was the everyman's rifle, the gun that armed more American boys than almost any other. Introduced in the mid-1960s, it was a multi-pump pneumatic that fired both steel BBs and lead pellets, and its genius was affordability. For around $10, a family could put a real adjustable power air rifle under the tree, and put it there they did, more than 16 million times over the decades. A boy would pump the forearm and feel the power grow with every stroke, load a BB from the reservoir that rattled with 100 more, and settle the plastic stock into his shoulder like a veteran. It was light enough for a small kid to carry all afternoon and tough enough to survive being dropped, leaned on, and left in the weeds overnight. Whole summers were spent with a 760 slung across the back, patrolling the tree line, knocking cans off the woodpile, learning the slow arc of a BB fired at a distant target. Fathers taught safety with it, older brothers handed theirs down, and the pump, pump, pump of a 760 coming to life was the soundtrack of 1,000 backyards. Yet the very ubiquity that made the 760 beloved also made it invisible. A gun so common that nobody thought to treasure the early wood-stocked versions until they were gone. The Pumpmaster is still made today, but the original that taught the baby boomers to shoot has slipped quietly into the drawer of forgotten first guns. Number 7. The Daisy Buck Jones pump gave a boy a movie cowboy's gun and a compass to find his way home. Named for Buck Jones, the square-jawed stuntman turned B-Western star who had joined the Army at 16 and fought in the Philippines before he ever faced a camera, this pump-action rifle of the 1930s carried a detail no boy could resist, a genuine sundial and compass set right into the stock. A kid could tell the time by the sun and find true north without ever leaving the yard, which made every afternoon an expedition into unmapped territory. Built on Daisy's rugged pump design, it worked the trombone-style forearm to cock, and it fired with a satisfying authority that matched the seriousness of the man whose name it bore. Boys who idolized Buck Jones from the Saturday serials begged for his gun the way later boys begged for anything a screen hero carried, and the compass sealed the deal, turning a simple BB rifle into an instrument of adventure. Curiously, this little compass and sundial trick would echo down the years into legend, for it was these features, and not the famous Red Ryder, that a certain Christmas movie would later borrow for its most famous wish. Yet Buck Jones died a hero pulling patrons from a nightclub fire, and in time his fame faded, and the gun that carried his name faded with it. Today, the Buck Jones pump is a footnote treasured by collectors, its little compass still pointing north long after the boy who owned it grew old. Number 6. The Daisy Powerline 880 was the gun a boy begged for when the 760 was no longer enough. Arriving in 1972, it was the grown-up cousin of the Pumpmaster, a multi-pump pneumatic that fired both BB and pellet, but built to reach higher velocities and longer ranges, the kind of numbers a teenage boy could recite like scripture. Where the 760 was the honest starter, the 880 was the upgrade, the Christmas gift that said a boy was ready for real distance and real accuracy. A kid would pump it the full 10 strokes, feeling his arms burn, then settle in behind the sights and reach for targets the smaller guns could never touch. The far fence post, the sparrow on the wire, the can perched at the edge of the field. It became the backyard hunter's rifle, the gun that turned a stretch of woods behind the house into a proving ground. Older boys carried it with a swagger, and younger brothers eyed it with open envy, counting the years until they might be trusted with one of their own. Oral histories recall the 880 as the step-up gun, the reward for years of safe handling, the rifle that finally felt like it meant business. Yet, like so many workhorses, it was too common to be cherished, and the early versions, with their particular heft and finish, slipped from memory as the design was updated again and again. Still produced in modern form, the original Powerline 880 is remembered now only by the men who once pumped it 10 times and felt like marksmen. Number 5. The Sheridan Blue Streak was the gun a boy dreamed of, but rarely found under the tree. The air gun that grown men respected. Built in Racine, Wisconsin, and introduced in 1949, it was no toy. It fired an unusual .20 caliber pellet, 5 millimeters of lead that no other gun on the market used, and its multi-pump action drove that pellet out in the upper 600s of feet per second, powerful enough to be a genuine small game and pest rifle. At nearly $20 when it debuted, and more as the years went on, the Blue Streak cost several times what a boy's starter gun did, which put it firmly in the realm of the hoped for and the seldom received. A kid who got one on Christmas morning knew his family had made a sacrifice, and he treated it accordingly, learning to count his pumps, to keep the bluing wiped down, to shoot only when he meant it. The slim walnut stock, the rich blued barrel, the heft of a real precision instrument, all of it whispered that this was a gun to keep for life. Fathers who owned one guarded it, and sons waited years to inherit it. Oral histories recall the Blue Streak as the aristocrat of the pump guns, accurate beyond anything its size suggested. Yet after nearly 70 years, the Sheridan line was finally discontinued. Its unusual caliber and old-world craftsmanship, no match for the economics of modern manufacturing. Today, the Blue Streak is the prize of serious collectors, remembered as the gun that was almost too good to be a Christmas present. Number 4. The Daisy model. 1894 Spittin' Image was the cowboy carbine that outsold even the legends. Introduced in 1961 as a faithful lever-action copy of the famous Winchester Model 94, the rifle that truly won the West, it gave a boy the exact gun his heroes carried on horseback, right down to the loop of the lever and the lines of the receiver. It became the best-selling BB gun in all of Daisy's history, outstripping even the beloved Red Ryder. And for a stretch of years, no gun ruled the American backyard more completely. A boy would work that lever with a hard downward snap, hear the mechanism cycle, and feel for a heartbeat like a rider on the open range. The 1894 was built to be handled hard, carried through creek beds and up trees and across every imagined frontier, and it earned a fierce loyalty from the boys who owned one. Christmas mornings turned on the sight of that long box, and more than one grown man still remembers tearing the paper to find the Winchester of his dreams shrunk down to his size. The heft of it, the click and clack of the lever, the smell of oil on cold metal, all of it lived in memory long after the last can was knocked from the fence. Yet as the Western galloped out of American culture, and the catalogs turned toward tactical looks in modern polymer, the lever-action carbine lost its throne. The Spittin' Image faded from the wish lists, a quiet ending for the best-selling BB gun ever made. Number 3. The Daisy VL was the strangest gun ever to sit under an American Christmas tree because it was not really a BB gun at all. Introduced in 1968, the VL fired a genuine .22 caliber projectile ignited not by gunpowder, but by a revolutionary caseless propellant, a dab of compound stuck to the back of the bullet that lit off when struck by a jet of hot compressed air. The system had been dreamed up by a Belgian chemist named Jules van Langenhoven, whose initials gave the gun its name, and Daisy believed it had invented the future of shooting. For a brief, remarkable moment, a boy could own a rifle that straddled the line between airgun and firearm, sold at first without the paperwork a real gun demanded. A kid would work the cocking lever, feed in one of those odd little caseless rounds, and fire something that cracked with the authority of the real thing. It felt like a secret, a piece of tomorrow that had somehow landed in the present. Yet that very cleverness sealed its doom. Federal authorities took one look at a projectile-firing rifle sold like a toy and reclassified the VL as a firearm, which meant Daisy could no longer sell it the way it wanted to, and by 1969, the whole experiment was over. The VL had lasted barely a year. Today it survives as one of the great oddities of American gun history, a forgotten Christmas gift that was too far ahead of its time and too clever for its own good. Number 2, the Daisy number 25. Pump was the gun a boy graduated to, the rifle that meant childhood was giving way to something more. Its trombone-style pump action, cocked by sliding the forearm back and forth, was modeled on the Winchester Model 12 shotgun, and it gave the number 25 a grown-up handling that no lever gun could match. Designed by Charles Lefevre and produced from before the First World War all the way to 1978, it sold more than 8 million times over its long life, making it one of the most successful air guns ever built. A boy who found a number 25 under the tree knew he had been promoted, handed the gun the older kids carried, the one with the 50-shot magazine and the satisfying chunk of the pump. He would work that forearm and feel like the man of the house, lining up on distant targets with a rifle that meant business. Fathers passed the number 25 down through generations, and its embossed receiver, sometimes carrying a hunting scene worked into the metal, became a familiar sight leaning in the corner of 1,000 mudrooms. Oral histories recall it as the step-up gun, the graduation present, the rifle that made a boy feel he had earned his place. Yet after 60 years of faithful service, the number 25 was finally discontinued, and though it would one day return, the original pump that shaped generations of American boyhood slipped for a time out of production and out of memory, a legend hiding in plain sight. And finally, in first place, the Daisy Red Ryder crowned the American Christmas as the most begged-for BB gun of them all. Introduced in 1938 and named for the comic strip cowboy who galloped across the funny pages of 100 newspapers, the Red Ryder was a lever-action carbine with a saddle ring on the side and a leather thong tied through it. Everything a boy needed to feel like a hero of the range. It was not the most powerful gun, nor the most accurate, but it was the one that lived in the American imagination like no other, the gun that appeared on wish lists in trembling pencil year after year. A boy would work the lever, feel the saddle ring bump against the stock, and become for an afternoon the bravest rider in the West. The wish book showed it every December, and children studied that page the way scholars study scripture, memorizing every detail against the hope of Christmas morning. Then a movie sealed its immortality forever, a boy named Ralphie pleading for a Red Ryder against the eternal warning that he'd shoot his eye out. And in one of history's great ironies, the film gave its Red Ryder a compass and a sundial the real gun never carried, borrowing that touch from an older cousin on this very list. No matter. The Red Ryder had already become the very symbol of American boyhood, the gun that meant a father trusted his son, that a boy was growing up, that Christmas had delivered the one thing he wanted most in the world. Across all 15 entries, from the humble Marksman pistol that opened our list to the immortal Red Ryder at the very top, these forgotten BB guns tell the story of American boyhood itself. They were rites of passage handed across the breakfast table, first lessons in trust and patience, and the weight of doing a dangerous thing carefully. They filled the wish book, ruled the backyard, and taught millions of boys to aim true. Most have vanished now, retired to attics and collectors' cases, their pings and twangs faded from the American afternoon. But for the boys who once tore open a long, narrow box on Christmas morning, the memory never fades. The smell of oil and cold steel, the first careful shot, the promise that this year, at last, they had gotten the gun.